Shalom, family.
Shalom.
Shalom.
I'm Bishop Taz, and along here with Brother Kayakum, who will be reading for me today of the House of Judah International Fellowship. Everybody give him a hand for his first day. All right, so we are in week 3, right, of this series that we put together that has been entitled The Children of Israel, right? Now, what we went over, going back over what we went over in previous weeks. The first week, we went over the 12 tribes chart and broke down the myths surrounding the 12 tribes chart, the misunderstandings, and really everything that sort of misconceived and misread about what it is the 12 tribes chart is, right? And who the people on the 12 tribes chart are, right? So from week to week, we're going to be breaking down not only each tribe and who they were, but where they are today and where they have been spread out to. Last week, we went into the tribe of Reuben. Go ahead and run the clip. So this is one of the things that we would identify the children of Reuben with. Now, there's another prophecy that was given from Moses to the children of Israel in Deuteronomy 33. So let's get Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 6.
Deuteronomy 33 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few.
There's a discrepancy here. It says, let Reuben live and not die, let not his men be few. So when you read this, you would think, oh, this is saying that he's going to have a large amount of children. They're going to be very fruitful. They're going to have a lot of kids, big population. But there's a problem here. That's just from first glance. But when you go into the Hebrew and look at other translations of this same verse, it says the opposite. Let's get the Darby Bible's version of Deuteronomy 33.
Deuteronomy 33 and 6. Let Reuben live and not die, and let his men be few.
So Darby says, let Reuben live and not die, and let his men be few. So now he's saying, now we see Moses saying that his men are going to be few in number. Let's get the Bishop Bible. Keep in mind, the Bishop's Bible was actually published prior to the King James 1611. It was released in 1568. Right? So let's read the Bishop's Bible version of Deuteronomy 33 and 6. Read.
Deuteronomy 33 and 6. Let Reuben live and not die, and be few in number.
And be few in number. So we're seeing the same thing again. They're saying, let his men be few in number. Right? Let's get the Hebrew.
H4 962. Moth. Associates. Few. Few men being few. Number.
Right. So now we're seeing here in the Hebrew that the Hebrew is confirming exactly what the Darby Bible and the Bishop's Bible are saying, that his men will be few in number. So when we look at the Hebrew and the other translations, we see that Moses is not saying that their numbers would be great, but rather saying that they would be few in number, a small population. All right. So last week was a detailed lesson on going into pretty much the tribe of Reuben, right? Now, what we did to first begin breaking down the tribe of Reuben was we started firstly with the prophecies surrounding the tribe of Reuben. What would identify the tribe of Reuben in particular, right? And from that point, we were able to connect the dots and actually break down the history of the Australian Aboriginals, as well as those who were spread out across the islands of, for example, Tasmania, and also some areas in the South Pacific as well. Now, this week, we'll be going into Simeon and Levi, the tribes of Simeon and Levi, right? So without any further ado, let's get Genesis chapter 49, verse 5.
Genesis 49 and 5. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations.
Mm-hmm.
6. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united.
Mm-hmm.
For in their anger they slow a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. 7. Cursed be their anger, for it was a fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel.
Okay, so let's break this down little by little, right? The first verse, verse 5 says, Simeon and Levi are brethren, right? Now, obviously, they're brothers. We know that there's 4 mothers of the 12 tribes of Israel. Leah, Rachel, and their handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah, right? So there are 4 different mothers. Simeon and Levi come from the same mother, Leah, right? So they obviously are brothers, right? So saying that they're brethren doesn't really shed any light on what it is that the Most High, what it is that the Most High is trying to convey here through Jacob, right? So when we look at this, we're looking for something a little bit concerning the prophecy of Simeon and Levi, right? When Jacob says that they are together, he's referring specifically to their dwelling place. Remember, Genesis 49 and 1 said what? 49 and 1 verse 1 through 2 says what? It says that we shall let me tell you what shall befall you in the last days, right? It's specific to after Christ's birth. The last days begun when Christ was born, his advent, right? So from this point, what we're seeing here is Jacob conveying where they would be, a location, a geographical location, right? Now, as we go through the tribes in Genesis chapter 49, we're going to witness we're gonna witness Jacob continue to do the same thing, give geographical locations as to where the 12 tribes of Israel are in the last days, right? So he's saying here is that you'll be dwelling together, you'll be in the same dwelling place, right? Simeon and Levi are together, right? The next part, he says, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. That right there proves that he's talking about dwelling places as opposed to kinship, right? It says instruments of cruelty are in their habitations, right? That means and instruments of cruelty, according to the scriptures, are witchcraft, right? Sorcery, necromancy, right? And we're going to continue to examine what it is that it is according to scripture later on in the lesson, right? So it says, Simeon and Levi are together in the last days, and instruments of cruelty, witchcraft, are in their midst, right? For anybody who's Haitian, you know, you know what goes on there. You know how it is that how you won your independence from the French. And for the Dominicans, you know how it is that you got your independence from the Spaniards, both of which put to use, put black magic to use, right? Now go ahead and read verse 6 for me, brother.
Verse 6. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly, mine honor be not thou united.
It says, "O my soul, come not thou into their secret." In these dark alleyways or in their voodoo temples. It says, enter those not. Don't enter their assembly. Don't participate in their wickedness. See, we see a lot of not only our people from other tribes, but also those who are Gentiles who go to places like Haiti and Benin and Togo, specifically to see these witch doctors, to see these warlocks, right? For that sole purpose. The Most High commands us not to do that. He says, mine honor, be not thou united. Why should they not be united? Why do they need to be kept separate? Because in the couple of times where they were united, we've seen the power of Simeon and Levi together. Not only did they take a whole country together, they destroyed a city. Just Simeon and Levi, 2 men destroyed an entire city. Right? It says, mine honor, be not thou united. Read.
Be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. And in their self-will they digged down a wall. Right? This is talking about what happened in Shechem, what I just referred to, when Simeon and Levi were angry after their sister Dinah was raped by a man in Shechem. Now, what they did was in an appeal to Jacob, they agreed to be circumcised so that he could marry Dinah, right? Properly handle his business. Now, after he was circumcised,
Simeon and Levi took that opportunity to destroy them. Men, women, children. They destroyed everyone. No mercy on anyone. This is what Jacob is referring to. It's referring to how they absolutely obliterated a city. In their anger, they slew a man. Read.
And in their self-will, they dig down the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 7. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel.
Now, when you actually look into the history surrounding Haitian independence and the Dominican independence from Spain, if you actually do your studies and if you actually research fully what actually happened, you will see just how cruel and bloody these wars were, these battles were. Right? It's referred to as the nation was soaked in blood. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. Right? When these brothers, when the tribe of Simeon or when the tribe of Levi has an issue with you, no mercy is shown. They go until you're absolutely destroyed in the worst way imaginable. That's what the instrument of cruelty is for, right? Read the second half of verse 7.
I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel.
I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel, right? Now, we already discussed when these nations are united, how powerful they are, right? And for this reason, the Most High prophesied to scatter these two tribes amongst all the tribes of Israel in the last days, right? This greatly applies to Simeon, right? Why do I say that? Because Levi was already divided amongst all the tribes of Israel. They were the priests. They didn't have an allotted land in the land of Israel, in the kingdom of Israel. So they were already divided amongst the children of Israel. Simeon had an allotted land that surrounded Judah. That was in the middle of Judah. Right? So for this reason, when you look at both tribes being scattered amongst all the tribes of Israel, it applies more so to Simeon because later events would determine where it is that they went. Right? Let's get that. Let's get the Testament of Simeon, chapter 2, verse 13.
Testament of Simeon 2 and 13. 2 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
For I have seen it inscribed in the writing of Enoch, that your sons shall be corrupted in fornication, and shall do harm to the sons of Levi with the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 14.
Now, he said he's seen it in the writing of Enoch. Simeon was reading from his grandfather's work, just as everyone else of that time was reading from the book of Enoch, just as Jude read from the book of Enoch, and just as Christ read from the book of Enoch. Right? So he said, I've seen it inscribed in the writing of Enoch that your sons shall be corrupted in fornication and shall do harm to the sons of Levi with the sword. Go ahead and read that.
Verse 14. But they shall not be able to withstand Levi, for he shall wage the war of the Lord and shall conquer all your hosts.
So there would be a perpetual battle between these two people, the tribe of Simeon and the tribe of Levi. There's a perpetual battle between the two. Now, this is interesting because when you actually read about Simeon and Levi were very close. Probably you can argue that they were the closest two of all the brothers outside of Joseph and Benjamin, right? But their children are battling against one another in this dwelling, right? So Simeon says, not only is it written in Levi, but also we're going to see that that this is what Joseph was talking about. This is what Jacob was talking about in Genesis 49. Continue reading.
Verse 15. And they shall be few in the number, divided in Levi and Judah, and there shall be none of you for your sovereignty, even as also our father prophesies in his blessings.
Prophesies in his blessings, right? So Jacob, not only did Jacob talk about this, but Enoch wrote of it. So there will be a battle between between the Levites and the Simeonites, instigated by the tribe of Simeon. And the tribe of Simeon would be decimated by the sons of Levi. Right? Now, and then it goes on to say that they shall be few in number, divided in Levi and Judah, and there shall be none of you for sovereignty. Now, what is this talking about? This isn't saying that their numbers would be small altogether. It's saying that they would be small in the locations where they were. Since they were spread out, when you take a large amount of people and you spread them out over a large area, it would seem as though it's not as large as it actually is. Make sense? If there's some of these people scattered a little bit of everywhere, it would seem thinner. That their group, the racial group, would seem a lot thinner than what it actually is. Now, the presence of Simeon in the Western world is smaller for this reason, because of their battles with Levi, and also their colonization by the Europeans, which we'll get into as well. Right? So they would instigate with the tribe of Levi, and they would fail horribly to their destruction, right? And they would be scattered amongst the southern kingdom of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and they would also be scattered in the northern kingdom of Ephraim, right? So what does this mean? This means that you could be from any one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Think that you're that tribe wherever you're from. Say you're from we went over Reuben last week. You could be be amongst the Australian Aborigines, look like them, talk like them, think that you are them, get before Christ, and he puts you in a line with Simeon. You could be standing around here thinking that you're Judah. Oh yeah, my family all the way back, slave ships. Yeah, I'm Judah. Find out that you're Levi or Simeon, right? Because these two tribes are scattered within all of the destination, all the current locations of the 12 tribes of Israel, which also goes to show that your tribe, that where you come from, your tribe has nothing to do with the way that you look. Has nothing to do with the way that you look, because there's people from the tribe of Simeon that look just like Judah. There's people from the tribe of Levi that look just like Judah, because they are amongst Judah, because they are amongst Ephraim, because they are amongst Naphtali. So looks has nothing to do with what tribe you're from. If that's the case, why doesn't the tribe of Judah in America look like the tribe of Judah in Africa? We're the same people, we're from the same place, but we don't look exactly the same. Why? Because looks don't denote tribe. They don't denote lineage. Appearances change by circumstance. Right? So based off of what we read in Genesis chapter 49, in Simeon's testament, we're looking for, number one, we're always looking for the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Number two, we're looking for inhabitants on a land, two separate people dwelling on one land. Number three, extreme use of the dark arts. And number four, conflict between the two living on the land. So not only do you have two separate nations living on one land, one landmass, there's a conflict between the two. Right? Black Indians by W.L. Katz, page 34. Now, this is the book Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage. This goes into not only the tribe of Judah here in America and the Native Americans, but the relationship and the relationship between the two throughout history. Right? And that just doesn't go for the tribe of Judah. We're going to see that it goes for the tribe of Levi and Benjamin as well, and their interactions with the natives of whatever respective landmass they were on at that time. So this is Black Indians by W.L. Katz. Let's get page 34.
In 1522, Europeans in the Americas first learned that slavery did not easily or painlessly lead to enormous wealth.
So it says in 1522. Now keep in mind, this is still during the early parts of uniform slavery. I said it last week. Slavery had been perfected over time. It had to be practiced and perfected over time, right? So when we're examining slavery, we can't look at the transatlantic slave trade and see the end result and think that this could have been the only thing. It began first. It had to be first practiced. It was perfected in the island of Hispaniola, Cuba, and what was before the Bahamas. And we're going to get into that later as well. So it says Europeans in America first learned that slavery did not easily or painlessly lead to enormous wealth. This did not start out as a profitable business. Any business that you start, how many business owners we have in here? It costs money to start a business, right? So you start out in a hole, right? It's the same thing if you're trading foreign exchange, right? You start out in a hole. Why? Because you have commission. No matter what, the house always gets paid. So whether you're trying to start a business or not, whether you're trying to start your own business or not, money has to come out of your pocket. So you're starting out in the negative, and over time, you build your way into the positive. So for such a large enterprise that required ships, food, methods of enslavement, right? Travel at that time, they were in a deep wealth gap. They were in a deep wealth hole. They were very much in debt. So in order to build themselves out of debt, it took time in perfecting the process. So it did not easily lead to enormous wealth. So tell me, if the transatlantic slave trade was the first slave trade, how did it go so smoothly? How was it already in profit? How did they know that it was already a profitable business? Because it started somewhere else. You had the sub-Saharan slave trade of the West Africans in the 1400s. You had the Indian Ocean slave trades of the people in West and East Africa. Then you had the Trans-Pacific slave trade. And then you finally had the transatlantic slave trade, not to mention all the other slave trades that happened in between those. It's a lot more complex than many would like to believe. It's not just the transatlantic slave trade. If you limit your mind to the transatlantic slave trade, you're missing where the rest of our people are. Tell me, the transatlantic slave trade mostly sent certain tribes from West Africa to the Western Hemisphere. Where do the blacks in Europe come from? Where do the blacks in the Middle East and the Arab world come from? There were other slave trades, right? Go ahead and continue reading. On Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day, Africans and Indians on a plantation owned by Diego Columbus rose and murdered their masters and overseers.
So it says Africans and Indians. Now, when you look at Africans, it's speaking specifically to the tribes of Levi. It's speaking to the tribes of Levi. How do we know this? We're going to get into the maps and the trades later, right? And the Indians are the Taínos of Hispaniola. I want to make this clear. Not all Taínos are the same. Just like not all Africans are the same. And not all Aborigines are the same. Taínos, although they are thought to be of one major race, there were sects or tribes between them. Right? So the Taínos of Hispaniola are very different than the Taínos of Puerto Rico. Very different from the Taínos of Cuba or of the Bahamas. These were all separate tribes, right? So the Africans or the Levites and the Taínos of Hispaniola, of the island of Hispaniola, the tribes of Simeon, on a plantation owned by Diego Columbus. Diego Columbus is the son of Christopher Columbus, rose and murdered their masters and overseers. This was the first real slave rebellion. Read.
Nearby, Native Americans joined the rebels.
Mm-hmm.
The beautiful island of Hispaniola shook with one of the first recorded slave rebellions in the New World.
They took that. Not only did they rally and take the country, and it required reinforcements that they had to bring from out of country, but they also got the surrounding natives who were also enslaved to help. Sound familiar? It sounds exactly like Shechem to me. The two get together and they just knock off a whole army of people. This is not the first time that this happened for these groups of people, and it's definitely not the last. We're seeing the same thing in Cameroon to this day, right? So this was the first recorded slave rebellion in the New World, and it was not the last. Haitian independence was what sparked rebellion in the Americas for the tribes of Judah, right? So the Africans, I want to make this clear again. The Africans mentioned by W.L. Katz are Haitians, right? Who are primarily sourced from Nigeria, Benin, and Togo, right? For those who do not understand the concept of Yorubaland, Yorubaland, right? It was the original landmass that wasn't broken up until the 20th century. The early 20th century. I believe the exact year is 1914. We'll be getting into it later. But Yorubaland was a Levite nation. It was a completely Levite nation, right? That spanned it from parts of Ghana, parts of southeast Ghana, all the way down to Nigeria, right? And as far up as Burkina Faso, right? And actually parts of South Niger as well. So it was a pretty large landmass, and it was known as Yorubaland before it was divided, right? So we have Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and they're also found as the Ewe tribe in Ghana. This is the priestly tribe of Levi. Now, they're still priests to this day. They're just priests on the dark side, on the dark side of things, as opposed to the Most High side of things, right? We know when Levi's right, they're right. But when they're wrong, they're very wrong. There's not too much gray area there, right? Now, the Indians that Katz mentioned are the Dominicans, who prior to the arrival of the Spaniards were the Taínos of Hispaniola. This is the tribe of Simeon. We will be getting into this and expounding on it a little bit more. Now, I also want to make this clear. Upon the disbanding of Yorubaland, the Levite land in Africa, they were spread out. Some of them went to Cameroon. Some of them went further north. Some of them went further west, right? But Levi has always, since the conception of the Israelite nation, has always been a little bit of everywhere Israel is, right? So even as we go into the tribe of Judah in later weeks, and as we go into the tribe of Benjamin in later weeks, we'll see a Levite presence amongst all of them, right? Let's get The Hope of Israel by Manasseh ben Israel, page 112.
I shall speak somewhat in this discourse of the divers opinions which have been and shall declare in what countries it is thought the 10 tribes are.
So this is based off of his research and the consensus of, now keep in mind, this is not just based in his research. This is the consensus at that time. It wasn't until modern history that the belief was that these were Asiatic people, not Semitic people. At this time, they knew the lost tribes were lost. And they knew that the only people that were lost were these people in the Western Hemisphere. So it was common knowledge of that time that the lost 10 tribes were in the Americas. Right? But let's hear what he has to say. Read.
Hispaniola, the island of Cuba, the continent of America, Panama, New Spain, and Peru. All
right, so Manasseh ben Israel, his real name is Manuel Diaz Cerrito, so his Hebrew name is Manasseh ben Israel. He's a Portuguese rabbi, Kabbalist, writer, diplomat, printer, publisher, etc. And he's clearly stating here that he believed not only that the native Tainos of Hispaniola, the Dominicans, were Israelites, but also the Cubans, North and South Americans, Panamanians, Mexicans, and Peruvians. Right? Now, keep in mind, the natives of North and South America, as well as those on the islands in between, were always thought to have been of one race. Right? They're always thought to have been of one race, which is correct. Different tribes, one race. This information comes as no surprise, since Christopher Columbus traveled to the Western world using the books of Esdras with the sole purpose of finding the Israelites. We went into this on part 1 in the 12 tribes chart. Right? Let's get Lost Tribes and Promised Lands by Ronald Sanders.
All his life, Columbus's ideas about geography were permeated with a peculiar region's mysticism. He kept a book of prophecies in which he collected quotations, mostly from the Bible and often those dealing with isles far off.
Right? Now, keep in mind, we're going to go into this in later weeks as well. The tribe of Naphtali used the same information to find the islands where they went to. Make no mistake, they did not find the South Pacific by accident. The tribe of Naphtali are the greatest seafaring people that ever lived. They did not find these islands by accident. The same things that they used to find the islands, Christopher Columbus used to find the islands. What is that? Scripture. In later weeks, we'll be going into the book of Enoch, which gives a detailed account of where the islands are. Right? So it says that he kept a book of prophecies, and a majority of his discoveries concerning geography came directly from the Bible. Read.
A striking element of Columbus's geographical religiosity is his intense and abiding interest in the 4th or 2nd book of Esdras.
Esdras, right? Let's get page 92. Jump forward to page 92.
We do not know much concerning Columbus's crew of about 90 men, about 3 ships, but at least one of them was an Israelite whose presence as such was not accidental. This was Luis de Torres, a covert of possibly only that year, who had once held a position with the governor of Murcia. He was said to have known Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic, and had been brought along by Columbus specifically as an interpreter.
He didn't need him for none of his skills but to interpret. Why? See, 2nd Esdras chapter 13 tells us that the 10 tribes left. They left to go to a land where no mankind dwelt. So he's saying, if I can find this land where no mankind dwelt, guess what I'm going to run into? He's going to run into these 10 tribes. And he said, you know what? For when I do, I'm going to need to have a Hebrew interpreter. I can't speak Hebrew. I need to bring somebody who does. Why? Because he's going to be running into a Hebrew-speaking people. Not by accident. Not by accident at all. On purpose. And as we go forward in the history, we're going to see just how on purpose not only his finding those islands were, but what he did when he got there. How on purpose that was too. Right? Not only did Christopher Columbus's geographical knowledge come directly from the scriptures, but he used 2nd Esdras to find the lost tribes in the new lands. This is why he brought an interpreter to speak to the natives. Now, same thing. Keep in mind, it was no secret that lands existed outside of America for anyone who read the Bible at that time, outside of what was east. It was common knowledge. See, not only were the 12 tribes dispersed across the four corners of the earth, the 10 tribes upon leaving, they knew where each other were. The tribe of Naphtali frequently traveled back and forth from North America. They would wayfind their way there, and then they would ride the currents back. So it was common knowledge. Okay, if I find one, I find them all, which is how they found Puerto Rico and Cuba. They were told where they were by the natives in North America. That was for later explorers after Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus had already found those places, right? So there's no secret. It's no secret. Okay, if we find one, we find them all. They knew exactly where everybody was. Now let's get into the history. We have four things that we need to break down to prove that the Haitians and the Dominicans are predominantly the tribes of Simeon and Levi, right? First, the curses. Two nations living on one landmass. Three, they're both trying to destroy each other. And four, extreme use of black magic. Those are the four things we're looking for, right? That's not me. That's what we read earlier, Genesis 49 and the Testament of Simeon. Let's get a quote here concerning black magic in these islands. Go ahead and read that.
Haitian voodoo is an African diasporic religion that gradually developed in Haiti between the 16th and 19th centuries. It arose through the process of syncretism between the traditional religions of West Africa and the Roman Catholic form of Christianity. Adherents are known as voodooists or servants of the spirits. Servants of the spirits. Now, for those who have never heard of voodooism or black magic or witchcraft, we did two lessons actually back to back on that, starting with the interview that we did called Voodooism, right? With the sister that was from Haiti, right? Raised in a family of voodoo priests and priestesses, right? Haitian voodoo is extremely prominent in Haiti. And if you ask a Haitian brother or sister, if they know someone who's involved with it, they were involved with it, know someone who was involved with it, come in close contact with it in Haiti, or know someone who is involved with it or was involved with it and is directly descended from a voodoo priest or priestess. We have a brother in here that's Haitian. How close have you come to voodoo? Do you know somebody who has been in contact with someone who has, or have you seen it personally?
Going to Haiti, I mean, when you travel to the island of Haiti, that's the closest I came into contact with it. Was my family member, somebody that my family members knew. We did it. That was it. I was close.
See, I don't know if there's a Haitian in existence that haven't had some form of contact with Haitian voodoo. Right? In some way, form, or fashion. Right? Now keep in mind, Haitian voodoo has its origins, or voodoo as a whole has its origins in Benin. It began in Benin, which is where Haitians primarily come from. 40% of the entire population in Benin recognize voodoo as their official religion. 40%. And that 40% are those who recognize it as an official religion. That doesn't mean that they don't practice, that the other 60% don't practice or use or go to someone else who does use these practices. So that's just 40% that I identify as a official religion. Now Togo next door has the largest population of voodooists in the world by an extremely large margin. More than 3 million margin. They have 3 million more voodoo priests and priestesses than anybody else in the world. Not far behind them is the U tribe in Ghana. The U tribe in Ghana. They have 1 million followers that do the same practices. So we see, when you look at, remember the barriers that we set for Yoruba land, right? Yoruba land. You have Far East Ghana, right? And all the way up to Burkina Faso, and then all the way up to South Niger, all the way over to Nigeria, right? All of which practice Haitian voodoo, practice some form of black magic and mysticism. Don't forget the Yoruba, the medicine men in Nigeria, the Yoruba, right? We have a clip, right? Right? We have a clip. We're going to go ahead and run that. People think this stuff isn't real. they think voodoo is a game, that black magic is a game. This stuff is serious. You saw that brother lay down in the fire? And notice his clothes weren't even burning. Nah, just notice that. Notice that. Not get rid of his skin not burning. His clothes weren't even burning. Right? Benin and Togo. Some certain tribes in Ghana and certain tribes in Nigeria as well. Majority Levites, right? And that's primarily where Haitians were sourced in the time that we're about to go into, right? Concerning the slave trade. Now, they aren't the only ones on this island that practice some form of mysticism, right? The Cubans, also the Levites, because keep in mind, Levi is spread amongst every tribe, right? When they were sourced from Yoruba land, they were sent to Cuba. They were sent to Puerto Rico. They were sent to the Bahamas, right? And any Yoruba historian will tell you this. So the African Cubans or the Afro-Cubans are Levites, and they practice Santeria, right? Santeria is the Cuban form of Haitian voodoo, right? It's the same thing with brothers and sisters in Cameroon. In Cameroon, they use voodoo to battle the Boko Haram, much like how the Haitians used it to defeat the French. So they're still using the same forms of voodoo in Cameroon, in parts of Cameroon as well. Now, keep in mind, Cameroon is majority Judite land. Cameroon is majority Judah, but some tribes in Cameroon belong to the Levites or the Haitians, right? Dominicans have their own practice of Dominican voodoo or Dominican Santeria. This is practiced throughout the country as well. Like I said, go to any Dominican and ask them about Santeria, and they can tell you about it. they can either tell you about experiences that they've had themselves or someone close to them. They have some form of contact with Santeria in the Dominican Republic. And I'm sure some Haitians have had contact with Santeria in Haiti. Right? Now we have a lesson called voodooism for those who do not really understand the fullness of what voodoo is, whether it's Santeria or certain types of black magic roots in Africa. I mean, we go through pretty much all of that in our lesson on voodooism. Right? So already we've examined that 2 of the 4 prophecies that were given to Jacob are already confirmed. Right? Number 1, extreme use of dark magic. And number 2, 2 separate nations living on one land. Right? Now, let's get into Simeon first. I'm gonna go over these two separate tribes and break them down separately. Right? So Simeon, who is the father of the tribes of Simeon, told his sons that they would make war with the sons of Levi, but the sons of Levi would overcome them. Right? There's a very deep and intricate history surrounding the conflict between the Dominicans and the Haitians that stretches way back to before the arrival of the slaves, but back to the arrival of the slaves in Hispaniola. Right? If you ask a Dominican how they feel about Haitians, if you ask a Haitian how they feel about a Dominican, most likely the answers that you get aren't going to be very roses. Roses, honey, candy. Right? It's practically a war zone at the border between the two. Right? This led to mass killings on either side on dozens of occasions and skirmishes that still break out at the border between Haiti and Dominican Republic. To this day, look up relations between the Haitians and the Dominicans, and you're going to come up with about 50 separate massacres. Right? Them just straight up obliterating each other. They teamed up to get rid of the colonizers, but then started destroying each other afterward. Right? Prior to the arrival of the tribe of Levi, the slaves on the island of Hispaniola, there were slaves on prior to the arrival of the tribe of Levi in Hispaniola in the year of 1501, the Taínos were thriving on the land before the arrival of Christopher Columbus. Right? So prior to the arrival of Christopher Columbus on the island of Hispaniola, and prior to the slaves arriving in 1501, there was a thriving culture amongst the Taínos of Hispaniola. Let's get 10 tribes of Israel historically identified with the Aborigines of Western Hemisphere by Barbara Allen Simon. This book right here. Now, granted, I'm going to go back into some secular history, because this is what I consider a biased account. Right? What is a biased account? It's one that leads towards one idea more than completely explaining both sides. This explains why the Aborigines in the Western Hemisphere are Israelites. It does not rebut. It doesn't have any evidence that goes against that theory. So we're going to go into history to confirm the information in this book, since this is a biased account. Right? This is a great book to get. Definitely, you can find it pretty much anywhere. Hopefully, it's not sold out already. But let's get page 225.
The people of Haiti existed in that state of primitive simplicity, which some philosophers have fond pictures of, which some philosophers have fondly pictured as some of the most viable on earth, surrounded by natural blessing without even the knowledge of artificial wants. Hospitality was with them as a law of nature, universally observed. There was no need of being known to receive its succor. Every house was open to the stranger as his own.
So hospitality, right? We know hospitality is a law, right? It's a biblical law. So it says when they found these people, they found them in primitive simplicity. What does that mean? They were simple. They didn't have a lot of technology, not a lot of artificial things that would what Europeans would say make your life easier. Right? And they were okay with that. That's what primitive simplicity means. Right? And it says it was fondly pictured as some of the most valuable on earth. That means that the land that they had was extremely fruitful. They didn't have to till the ground much to receive fruit or whatever it is that they needed to survive. Right? And they were surrounded with these natural blessings without the knowledge of artificial ones. I mean, what you need can't fruit for when you got fruit hanging from a tree. Right? That kind of idea. Right? And it says hospitality was with them as a law of nature, universally observed. Now we're going to get into this. We're going to go into just how hospitable these people were, even at the point of their destruction. Right? It says that their house was open to the stranger as his own. How many of you know that Abraham invited strangers into his house? He fed them, he clothed them, he let them rest, and he sent them away. Israelites are the only people that are known for doing this. In fact, it's so specific to the nation of Israel that it's often used by itself to determine what, in this time, it was used by itself to determine whether someone was a tribe of Israel or not. Hospitality. Or are you going to be standoffish when I come to the door? Or I'm going to go ring the doorbell trying to get some sugar and don't get a response. Right? Hospitality was observed as a law of nature. And as we continue to go forward in these weeks, we're going to continue to see the exact same thing. Right? But no, in history, in history books, they show us as savages. They depict us as savages. But clearly, that's not what they encountered when they came to this land. Right? Now, check this out. Let's get Leviticus chapter 25, verse 35.
Leviticus 25 and 35.
Mm-hmm.
And if thy brother be waxen poor and fallen in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him.
Mm-hmm.
Yea, though he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. 36.
So check that out. It says, if any brother is waxing poor, if they're struggling, if they're down on their luck and fallen in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him. You help him. If you see somebody who's I was coming back with a brother that I know, Rafi, and we were on the road and we stopped and we're sitting at a red light and we saw a brother get out of his car. And he got out of his car, and there was an elderly brother that was walking up the street. He told the brother that he could get in the car with him. Took his walker and put it in the car, and he gave the brother a ride. Right? Now, I remember back in the day when that was normal. I remember growing up, and that was something that I saw often. But for some reason, when I saw it this time, I was like, wow, it's good to, and we literally said to each other, it's good to see that people still do stuff like that. Because it happens, it doesn't happen often anymore. Right? Especially now that they've sprung this COVID thing on people. Well, I would pick the elderly man up who clearly is having trouble walking. I would pick him up, but I might get sick. He might be COVID. Did Leviticus chapter 25, verse 35 say you help the poor as long as they don't have COVID? See, last time I checked, the Most High said, if you look upon me, and Christ said, if you look upon me and believe, you could tread on serpents. And no danger shall come nigh the children of Israel, right? Those who are doing the Most High's law, those who are keeping his laws, those who believe on Christ. What are we worried about a virus for? We were already promised protection, right? It doesn't say, oh, well, you invite them in their house as long as they have a negative COVID test. If they have a negative COVID test and a vaccine certificate, you can bring them in. Read verse 36.
Take thou no usury of him, or
Don't make him
increase.
pay. Saying, well, if you give me $5, I'll give you a ride. For the low price of 25 cents, I'll give you a ride, and you can get a shower. Or saying, well, you owe me. Remember, you owe me from the last time. The scriptures say, when you give something to somebody, expect nothing back. Don't expect to get something in return for a good work. When you give alms, you're storing up your treasure in heaven. Right? So it says, make no usury of him. Read.
Take thou no usury of him, or increase, but fear thy God, that thy brother may live with thee.
Read.
37. Thou shalt not give him thy money upon usury, nor lend him thy victuals for increase.
So saying, hey, I'll give you these mango seeds, and when you grow them, and when you get them trees and you start producing fruit, I expect you to come back and give me that fruit that I helped you get. Or giving them money and saying, yeah, whatever you buy with that money is mine. It's part mine. It says, thou shalt not give thy money upon usury. Usury is unfair interest. Yeah, I know I only gave you 3%, but I'm expecting about 15, 16% back on that. It says, nor lend him thy victuals for increase. Verse 38.
I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, to give you the land of Canaan, and to be your God.
So this was practiced amongst all the children of Israel, right? A natural law of hospitality. It was something that was just practiced, and it was unique to the children of Israel. This was not something that was practiced universally, right? So Columbus's view upon arriving upon arriving. Now, keep in mind, the Dominicans were originally the Haitians. Let's make that clear. It was the original name of the island was Haiti, which is basically Haiti. So they were the original Haitians in the first place. Dominican Republic was given to them by the Spaniards, and they were Hellenized, or they were Hispanicized, is what it's called, which is the same as being Hellenized, or what the Greeks did with the Jews during their Greek captivity. They made them change their identity, made them change their culture. They did the same thing with the Dominicans. They were Hispanicized. So they went from Haitians to Dominicans. So Columbus's view of the natives of Haiti upon arrival was very different than how how he would handle them in the future. Right? So he sees this people one way, but he treats them the opposite. How do we know this? Let's get the history of Saint Domingo.
It appears that all the islanders soon conciliated with presents and were so susceptible of the kind treatment of the strangers as to appear on the shore without arms.
So these people were so trusting, so hospitable. They came to now notice, when you look at the arrival of the Europeans, what do they always show in these paintings? They show the natives on the beach with spears. What's recorded here by Christopher Columbus himself is that the islanders arrived without weapons. They arrived on shore without weapons. Read.
Many of them venturing on board the ships, gifting fruit to their visitors and assisting them to get on shore.
Okay, so they even swam out, got on the boats, gifted them with fruit and victuals, and then helped them get onto shore. They helped them onto their land. Read.
In all their conduct, they evinced the very reverse of the malignant passions. In fact, they were gentle to indifference and dullness. And the worst part of their mental character was that they manifested no desire for improvement.
They said that's the worst part. It says the worst part of their mental character was that they manifested no desire for improvement because they didn't want cars, because they didn't want stone buildings and different things like that. That was the worst aspect of these people's mental state. Everything else was 10 out of 10. Right? Now, obviously, their mental character is a 10 out of 10 as well. Europeans don't see it that way. Europeans have the mindset of, oh, anybody we see that's not like us, we need to help. And since they don't want to become like us, we need to help their mental state to make them want to be like us. How many of you know the Most High said, with food, shelter, and raiment, be there with content? How many of you know that's the scriptures? These people had the perfect mindset. Not only were they keeping the laws of nature as established by the Most High in hospitality and their treatment towards other people, even strangers, they even had the mindset that Christ was trying to embed in his disciples, his followers, and even us still today. With food, shelter, and raiment, be there with content. They didn't need to improve. They had everything that they needed to survive. Right? Now, even with all their hospitality and their carefulness of these strangers, they received the opposite treatment. They received the direct opposite treatment. And it says, in fact, they were so gentle, they were gentle to indifference and dullness. You know how it is when you're trying to be nice to somebody, but they just keep being rude back. It's like, yeah, how you doing? Would you like something to drink? You want something to eat? Or if you offer somebody some food and they slap it out your hand, right? Yeah. They were gentle even to indifference and dullness. So the natives treated Columbus and his men with the utmost respect, even when treated rudely. This is not true only for Haiti, but also the Bahamas, right? The original Bahamas, which is where Christopher Columbus first landed. Now, that completely debunks the myth that the natives discovered by Columbus were savages. Because we've all heard that before, right? The natives threw a spear and killed someone, so they had to attack. They were eating people when we arrived. They were eating each other, killing babies when we arrived. Now we can get into these people we know as, now we can start getting into the people that we know to be the Dominican Taínos that suffer the curses, right? Because this is where the curses began with Christopher Columbus. Let's go back into the book and go forward to page 229.
Columbus exerted himself to send the satisfactory proofs of the value of his discovery, and that the royal treasury might the sooner be reimbursed for the expenses of the discovery and colonization. He sent 500 Indians prisoners to be sold as slaves in Seville.
In Seville, that's in Spain. So keep in mind what I stated earlier. Slave trade, when you're starting a business, you don't start out in profit. You don't begin in profit. You're spending money, not making money. So he's saying that the royal treasury might soon be reimbursed for the expenses of the discovery and colonization. That cost money, right? So he said, I'm going to send 500 Indians as prisoners to be sold as slaves. That's the first thing he did, right? Upon the arrival of these unhappy beings, Ferdinand gave orders for their sale. Read.
Ferdinand gave orders for their sale in the markets of Andalusia.
They started being sold as slaves immediately. Hold up. But black people were the only people to go on slave ships. This only happened to black people. This only happened in West Africa. The very first thing that Christopher Columbus did when he discovered that the people were here was wrap them up, put a bow on them, and send them to Europe. Send them to Spain. See, the first instance of slave ships in Haiti was of the African slaves, right? Keep in mind, prior to the slaves being shipped from Africa, the first to leave Africa were the Haitians, right? Or the Yoruba, those in Yorubaland, right? They were the first ones to be taken from Africa to a foreign land, right? And they were arriving in Hispaniola. The Critical Review, or the Annals of Literature, volume 57. Remember how I said that this book here, that the 10 tribes of Israel historically identify with the Aboriginals of the Western Hemisphere. This is a biased text. This right here, not biased text. This is confirmed history. Confirmed peer-reviewed history. Let's get page 141.
The Spaniards of their first settling of the West Indies immediately treated the natives of that part of the globe according to the Pope's instructions.
Wait, hold up. According to whose instructions?
The Pope's instructions.
Whose instructions?
The Pope's instructions.
The Pope's instructions. Oh, but the Roman Empire fell. The Pope was the one orchestrating the trade. The Roman Catholic Church was behind the slave trades. We even up until that point, from the time of Christ, Christ was in the Roman captivity. And even up until this point, they're still in the Roman captivity. They did after whose instructions?
The Pope's instructions.
The Pope's instructions. Why would Spain need to do that? Why would later England need to do that when they weren't subject to the Catholic Church? Because Rome is still in charge. Read.
They divided them by families or districts among themselves as slaves. The poor Indians were now forced to dive for pearls, to wash gold, and to work gold and silver mines for their new masters. They were often carried far from their native homes, and in short, they were miserably fed and used, that in a short time these countries were entirely depopulated. Entirely
depopulated. Remember what I said about the tribe of Simeon being few in number. When you look at the original, that full-blooded Tainos in the Dominican Republic, there are only 7,000 left. 7,000 full-blooded Taino, Dominican Tainos. 7,000 left. Now, granted, that population is growing. But between this and them getting into fights with the Levites, it was curtains. They had no chance. Read. Let's get page 141. And that includes not only Haiti, but Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and later on the people in the Bahamas. Go ahead and read.
In order to supply that loss, the Spaniards carried off the other Indians who were not yet subdued by stratagem or force, especially from the Lucuyan Islands.
Now, Lucian, which is now what was the old name for the Bahamas. The new name is obviously the Bahamas, right? Yeah. So since they killed everybody in these particular islands, they said, all right, we need to go get some natives from somewhere else. And they primarily took them from the Bahamas, which is why the Bahamas was originally populated with Taino. But when you go to the Bahamas today, it's primarily people of African descent. That's why. Because it was completely, they pretty much scrubbed the island of the people who were originally there. Read.
The Spanish court at last prohibited these violences, but the Spaniards soon found means for evading the orders of their court. They decreed the Indians in Europe as the most sanguinary race of savages, on which Ferdinand repealed his former orders.
And now, check that out. See, going in deeper detail, which we're going to go into in a second, the Queen, being a good Catholic woman, thought it was wrong, believed it was wrong for them to enslave a people that Christopher Columbus said had treated them so well. She said, why would you treat such good, hospitable people this way? So Christopher Columbus said, we got to fix this. So he said, you know what? They weren't hospitable. They were the most savage people I've ever run into. They were eating each other and they attacked our ship. They came out with spears and they're throwing spears at us. They boarded our ship, tried to sink it. It was by the grace of God that we stayed alive. Is what he said to the Queen. So Ferdinand said, you know what? They need to be saved by us. We're going to save these people. So let's make them Roman Catholic. And let's bring them back and sell them as slaves so they can be under good Catholic people. We'll show them how to become civilized. Think about it. You're barbarically destroying people, but you're trying to civilize the people that you're destroying barbarically. It's kind of backwards, isn't it?
Very much.
Now, granted, once Ferdinand and Isabella found out what Christopher Columbus was actually doing, Christopher Columbus died in prison. A lot of people don't know that. They didn't publicize that when Christopher Columbus, when they made Columbus Day a holiday, right? They didn't publicize that the Joker died in prison. Because of his atrocious acts, not only against these people, but people who were later confirmed to be descended from the 12 tribes of Israel. Go ahead and continue reading.
Ferdinand repealed his former orders and bade them to carry off these cannibals by force from their native places and to treat them and sell them as slaves.
These were just the most savage of people, and they need to be treated as such. So, Pope, how should we go about this? And the Pope told him exactly what to do.
And sell them as slaves.
Treat and sell them as slaves. And the Pope gave the okay. Right? Nah. Black people were the only ones who went on slave ships. The Bahamian people, and those are the same as those the Bahamian people of that time. The Bahamian natives, the Tainos of that area, are the same as those living in the South Americas, and we'll discuss that in later weeks. Right? When we get into the tribe of Asher, we'll discuss that in later weeks. But the Spaniards, prior to the arrival of the and they were enslaved by the Spanish prior to the arrival of the Africans in the West Indies. Right? So I'm going to say that again. The Bahamian people are the same as the natives in South America. Right? And they were enslaved prior to the arrival of the Africans in the West Indies. So all of these massacres and these destructions and these slave trades were happening before the Africans got there. Why is that important? Because it debunks the idea that the people who were being traded in the Western Hemisphere were Black people or the so-called Negroes. Right? Does everybody understand that? That's why it's important to have that information. These people were being sold and distributed prior to the arrival of any Negro, of any so-called Negroid or African presence in these areas. So this was not Africans being sold, right? The natives of the West Indies, not just the Dominican Taínos, were subject to the harshest forms of captivity, as was stated in Deuteronomy 28. Let's get Deuteronomy 28.
Deuteronomy 28 and 48.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee.
Mm-hmm.
49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far.
From far, right? A nation against thee from far. Now, they say, well, yeah, this is transatlantic slave trade. They came from America. But who was already enslaved in the Americas? Right? Christopher Columbus came all the way from Europe to the Western world and enslaved these people. Read.
From the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth.
Mm-hmm.
A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
Read.
50. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young.
They hunted down and murdered the elders first. The old, the elderly. They attacked the elderly first, right? And then they got the children. They destroyed the children, molested them, used them as what they call pleasure slaves. Their children. So they just destroyed the generations that came after. Just like Amalek, right? Y'all remember Amalek? Amalek is the main enemy of the children of Israel, Esau, right? And what did they do when we were traveling through the wilderness? They didn't attack us from the front because the men were up there. They went behind the back and attacked the elderly, the women, and the children. Because they're weak. Read.
51. And ye shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind.
See, that's the primary reason that these people were wiped out. Not only was their land taken from them and they were enslaved, but they weren't being properly fed either. Right? Majority of them died from starvation. Right? But nah, blacks only suffer these curses. Because we're the only ones that served, because black people are the only ones who served our enemies. Right? It was no mistake that Christopher Columbus, who was a Bible prophecy buff, would not only make it to the Americas, but he would enslave them. Now, we're going to get into this in later weeks. But Christopher Columbus believed himself to be that eagle. He knew that prophecy. He believed himself to be the villain in prophecy. How many of y'all knew that?
Wow.
He knew that prophecy. And he believed that he was the one who would enact that prophecy. That he would make good on that prophecy. And guess what? He was, and he did. To some extent, for this particular part of the children of Israel. We're going to get into that. That was found in Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. Right? His reasoning for doing so was that now keep in mind, check this out. His reasoning for a slave trade, for selling slaves, was that we found no gold. So we needed something to make money off of since there was no gold. Is that true? Let's get the National Library of Medicine.gov. Let's get that.
Spanish settlers enslaved.
Get the year. Get the year.
AD 1493.
Now remember, he discovered the Bahamas in 1492, and in that same year, he also discovered the island of Hispaniola. Right? Now, this is what he said when he got there. Read.
Spanish settlers enslaved the Taino of Hispaniola.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Columbus, who needs to demonstrate the wealth of the New World after finding no gold, loads his ship with enslaved Taino people.
So it says Christopher Columbus needs to demonstrate the wealth of the New World. First of all, wealth. If there's no gold there, then what's the wealth? If there's no gold, then how is there wealth? He says, you know what, we need to demonstrate the wealth of the New World after finding no gold, so he loaded his ships up with people. How backwards is that? If you needed people, there was people back in Spain. Read.
During the next 4 decades, slavery contributes to the deaths of 7 million Taino. By 1535, the Taino culture on Hispaniola is gone.
It's gone. Now our praises to the Most High is coming back. It's coming back. Slowly but surely, that culture is coming back. Right? Now, this history has been gone and neglected for these people for so long. They don't have it completely right. Have all of their history and their control and their culture completely right. But it's something. And remember, it's like I said, the culture as a whole and the people as a whole, there's only 7,000 of them left. 7,000 full-blooded Tainos. There's only 7,000 left, and the population has grown from that point. But the damage that was done to these people is irreparable. That's what happens when not only you destroy the elders with the knowledge and the wisdom, and you corrupt the children, and you Hispanicize the nation. You've eliminated a culture. Not extinct, but you've eliminated the culture. You've made the culture extinct. Now, some of the Gadites in North America, they were just completely wiped out. Some of those tribes, completely extinct. Wiped them out completely. Luckily for the tribe of the tribe of Simeon or the Dominicans, there were still some left. But his excuse was what? They had no gold, right? They found no gold. Is that true? Let's get 10 tribes of Israel historically identified one more time. Page 232.
At one time, the present consisted of a large plate of gold. At another, of a great golden mask, for which a Carthan basin and Ur were begged. On a certain occasion, the admiral dining on shore was received by the cacique and 5 subordinate chiefs, each bearing a golden crown.
So literally, when he got there, what they were presented with was gold. There was no shortage of gold in this area. Now, granted, not all of this was gold that they found on the island. A lot of it was gold that was brought from Assyria. But gold was found. But he said, you know what? Since there's no gold, we're going to send people back instead. As if he didn't find gold when he got there. Y'all see the lies and deceit of these people? Literally, it says that they brought a large plate of gold, another great golden mask, and then each 5 gold crowns. Right? And that's not even all. When you go even further into the history, which I'm going to get into a little bit later, when they approached the islands of Cuba, they brought him even more gold. The cacique actually took the crown off of his head and placed it on Christopher Columbus's head. But nah, he ain't finding any gold. Right? There was no shortage of gold in that area. Now, the value of the people was just as great. Right? It's like, Israelites are gold. Tell them that I found the 10 lost tribes are gold. I think the 10 lost tribes are a little bit better. But bear in mind, it was the accuracy of the scriptures that led him there. The history surrounding the Dominican Taínos prove that they are from the original tribes of Simeon. However, this cannot be fully acknowledged until the latter, which is Levi, has been proven as well. Right? So does anybody have any questions concerning Simeon? Then let's get to Levi. The Critical Review or Annals of Literature, volume 57. Let's get page 142.
Bishop Las Casas is generally thought to have been the first to advise the Spaniards to import slaves from Africa in order to spare the Indians, but out author shows that before that time, Moorish and even Negro slaves were sent to America.
Right. So it says that Bishop Las Casas was generally thought he's thought to be the first person to advise them to, instead of continuing to enslave Indians, but to ship in Africans. Right. He was what you would call a native sympathizer. He has sympathy for the natives of that land, but not any for the brothers and sisters in Africa. Go ahead and read. Oh, hold up. Now, I do want to get this. There's another excerpt under here. It says Las Casas' merits conflicted with saving South America from entire depopulation. Right, so he was protecting these people from being completely wiped out. What before him had already been done by private Spanish individuals, he procured to be done by a general of royal order, or he proposed that the Negroes, instead of few Moorish slaves, had till then been sent to America. He also deserved well of the commerce of America by procuring his remonstrances that the Negro slaves who before, like all other necessaries, had been sent from Seville to other Spanish harbors, were directly transported from Guinea to the West Indies. Right, so now it's starting to give you a legitimate location as to who and where people are being shipped. Right, now bear in mind, this is not talking about the same captivity. This is talking about the blacks that were enslaved prior to the Haitians. Right, there had already been slave trade of Africans in Seville. They just weren't. They weren't. However, they were not being used as slaves in the New World. Let me make that clear. Right, the slaves, the black slaves that were being sent to Europe were not at that time being sent to the Western world, to the Americas for servitude. Right, so these slaves from Guinea that it's talking about, which we'll discover later on, is primarily from the tribe of Judah, were sent to these areas. Right? Let's get Benin.
Before 1700, there were a few important city-states along the coast, primarily of the Asia ethnic group, but also including Yoruba and Gibe peoples. and a mass of tribal regions inland that composed of Bariba, Mahi, Gedevi, and Kabye peoples. The primary places slaves were taken from and sent to the French Caribbean was formerly known as Yorubaland, which was made up of Benin, Nigeria, and Togo.
Right, exactly the areas that we talked about earlier. So now we're actually starting to examine the history of the today, who are known today as the Haitians. Right. So let's go over this again. Due to depopulation and the destruction of the natives of Haiti, it was suggested that African slaves be brought to serve in those lands, primarily at that time being sourced from central and southernmost parts of West Africa. Right? Now, where they were being taken from is Europe, was known as Yorubaland, Benin, Nigeria, and Togo. Right, as well as southern parts of Nigeria, southern parts of Niger, and some of the southeast areas of Ghana. Right, let's get Yorubaland.
Yorubaland was home to the Levites prior to being enslaved by the Europeans. Yorubaland was in existence until 1960.
Right,
the military defeat at Imagbon of the Ijebu forces by the British colonial army in 1892 ensured that a tentative European settlement in Lagos, one which was gradually expanded by protectorate treaties. These treaties provided decisive in the eventual annexation of the rest of Yorubaland and eventually of southern Nigeria and the Cameroons. In 1960, Great Yorubaland was subsumed into the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
So this was the division of Yorubaland, right? At one point, there was no such thing as separate nations of Benin, Togo, and Nigeria. They weren't separate at that time. They were all one country, right? But over time, bits and pieces continued to be taken until the rest was originally completely annexed by Nigeria. Hence, you have 3 more countries. This is why Benin and Togo are often referred to together. When people hear Togo, it usually doesn't register. When people hear Benin, it usually doesn't register. But Benin and Togo usually registers together. Right? So the history proves and confirms that Haitians, Afro-Cubans, Bahamians, Afro-Puerto Ricans, and some Afro-Brazilians, and Afro-Venezuelans were taken from Yorubaland from the time of 1501 until the late 19th century. History confirms this. This is why, and this confirms the prophecy that Levi and Simeon would be scattered throughout all the tribes of Israel. Notice that's a little bit of everybody. The Haitians were sent a little bit of everywhere, right? Not all, but the vast majority of darker skinned Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Brazilians, and Venezuelans are from the tribes of Levi. Not all, but some, because remember what we went over in part 1. Ephraim is a cake not turned. Right? Ephraim is a cake not turned. Now, also remember, it was actually a good thing that the Levites were sent there. Because remember, they were on the verge of complete depopulation. A lot of these nations, they're on the verge of complete depopulation. What does that mean? They were going to die out eventually. So since the African slaves were brought in, now that's the Most High at work. Because keep in mind, Levi was due for judgment. The dark magic that they're practicing in West Africa, the child sacrifice that they're practicing in West Africa, they were due for judgment, just like Judah and Benjamin were due for judgment. So not only were they judged, but through their judgment, the other tribes were saved. I'm gonna say that again. Through Levi's judgment, the other nations, the other tribes were saved. How? The genealogy is carried through the man. A child is who their father is. If there's a shortage of women, because keep in mind, majority of the people that were being shipped from their original lands to Europe were women. Why? They were used for prostitution and things like that in Europe. The men were left to work the land. So if you bring in slaves, men and women slaves, guess what the men do? Guess what the native men do? They breed back in. They breed with the Haitian women or with the Levite women. Now, that child wouldn't be Levite. It would be from the tribe of Simeon. Therefore, saving the tribe of Simeon from extinction. See how the Most High worked? Brought back a whole nation from the verge of extinction. And that's where it goes back to pure blood Taínos. There aren't that many pure blood Taínos left, or what you would consider complete Taínos. They would be considered mixed today. But we know according to the law and according to scripture, there's no such thing as mixed. There's no such thing as a mixed person. If your father is Judah, doesn't matter what your mom is, you're Judah. If your father is not Thali, you're not Thali. There's no mixing. This is so inheritance don't bounce back and forth, right? We know that according to scripture and according to Israelite tradition, we were supposed to marry within our own tribes. Even though it did happen where we saw one tribe marry another, where we saw one tribe marry another, it didn't happen often. But when it did happen, if you have the father who's from the kingly tribe of Judah and the mother who's from the tribe of Levi, you have a mixing of inheritance. So to keep that from happening, the woman neglects her inheritance and comes underneath the man. So she is no longer of the priestly tribe, but of the kingly tribe. Make sense? So all these people who are saying, oh, well, if the women were being raped and the children were born, that means that their daddy was a European. So that means that they're European. So even if they were Israelites, they're not Israelites no more. What about the men? I went into this last year. Can men get raped and have babies from other men? No, that's not how it works. So if there were still Taíno women left and they were breeding with Taíno women, their children were Taíno. And if the men were, even if the men were breeding with European women, the children are still Taíno. A Taíno breeds with a Haitian. The children are still Taíno. There is no mixing. Inheritance doesn't move back and forth. So that just shows you how the Most High worked. The timing of Bishop Las Casas, even though what he was doing was evil, it was what he perceived was good. Oh, I'm saving one nation at the expense of another. But that was the Most High working to make sure that the tribe of Simeon was preserved for the last days. Right? Let's get the critical review. Page 142 again.
Las Casas' proposal was executed in 1517.
So 16 years later, it was officially executed. Read.
The Court of Trade at Seville appointed 4,000 Negroes to be annually transported to the islands of Domingo, Hispaniola, Fernandina, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica.
So immediately, Levites began being sent to all of these areas. Now, I want to make this clear. Jamaica is not a Levite nation. Levites are there, but it is not a Levite nation. Remember, Levi is scattered amongst everyone, right? The people originally in Jamaica were Taínos, who were nearly wiped out, right? The people that are predominantly there now come from actually, you know what, we're gonna get into that in a couple of weeks. I don't want to spoil the tribe of Benjamin lesson, right? Let's go back to Yoruba land, because what we get here in Wikipedia from Yoruba land confirms what we're reading here in the critical review or the Annals of Literature. So go ahead.
The other Yoruba city-states broke free of Oyo dominance and subsequently became embroiled in a series of internecine wars, a period when millions of individuals were forcibly transported to the Americas and the Caribbean, eventually ending up in such countries as the Bahamas, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Haiti, Venezuela, and among others.
Says the exact same thing that we read in the critical review or in the Annals of Literature. Benin, Togo, and Nigeria. In some parts of Ghana, South Niger, and obviously sprinkled throughout Africa as a whole. Right? It makes it clear. During these wars, millions, not thousands, not hundreds, millions of individuals were forcibly transported to the Americas, the Caribbean, eventually ending up in such countries as the Bahamas, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Haiti, Venezuela, among others. Basically sent everywhere. Right? So when you look at Kimbo Slice from the Bahamas, that's a Levite. When you're looking at Big Papi Ortiz, he's a mix between Levite and Dominican, right? Or Levi and Simeon. So you continue to see this throughout these times. So when you go and you look and you see a Afro-Cuban or Afro-Mexican or Panamanian, because keep in mind, Panamanians are still pretty dark skinned. The darker Panamanians, those are Levites, right? The annals of literature do not identify the Negroes as those coming from Yoruba land, right? But when this piece of information is revealed, there is more context as to why there are such cultural similarities between from Togo to Benin to Nigeria and parts of Cameroon and tribes in Ghana. Once you figure out where Yoruba is, it unlocks everything else. Now, after you've unlocked Yoruba land, you know where Judah came from. After you've unlocked Yoruba land, you know where Benjamin is. And from that point, now everything opens up. Why? Because they were the first to be sold. Right? They were the first to come west. I put it that way. They weren't the first to be sold. They were the first to come west. Why? Because Judah is at the neck of the enemy in Africa, which is what we're going to go over later. They're at the neck of the enemy. They were directly, they're neighbors with the Hamites who were selling us into all of the slave trades, the sub-Saharan slave trade, the Indian Ocean slave trade. We were the first to be taken from those areas, right? Since we were at the neck of the enemy. But the first ones to be shipped to the Western Hemisphere were Levites. Now, today we find Levi in Togo, Benin, the Yoruba and Nigeria, Cameroon, and nearly all isles of the Caribbean, as well as the mainland, right? Now we find Simeon in the Dominican Republic, all the isles of the Caribbean, and scattered amongst all the tribes of Israel and their lands. Notable forefathers and mothers from Levi are Moses, Aaron, and Esdras. They were all descended from Levi. Simeon is Nahum, Judith, and Judas Iscariot. Y'all know the guy who betrayed Christ? He was from the tribe of Simeon, proving that they were dispersed even in the time of Christ. Not all of Simeon went with the 10 tribes. There was still some left over, right? And I'm still doing some history and some research because we're looking at the elder and I were looking at some lineages in the King James 1611, and we see Simon Peter on there under Simeon. So we want to make sure that that's the Simon Peter, the same Simon Peter that Christ gave the keys to the kingdom, right? So we're still doing some work on that. There's nothing confirmed, but that just goes to show how deep Simeon's roots run in each tribe. And it goes to show that you can't look at somebody and tell what they are. Can't do it. It's impossible, right? You can't look at somebody and say, oh, well, I can give you an idea as to who you may be based off of where you are, but I can't say definitively. The scriptures only gave us locations. It gave us curses. If you fulfill those curses, if where you are or where you're descended from fulfills those curses, who am I to tell you that you're not? At the same time, I can't say where you are. That's not my job. We went over that in week 1. It's Christ's job to divide the sheep from the goats. He's going to determine who's who. Because you may be thinking that you're getting in the line for Judah, or you getting in the line for Levi, or you getting in the line for Benjamin, and mind up, turns out you a Hamite. You ain't even Israelite altogether. It's going to happen that way for some people. And you're going to be around there looking stupid because the guy that you told wasn't an Israelite. He over there. Turns out he was, and you weren't the whole time. It's not our job. Our job is to preach the gospel unto all nations across the 4 corners of the earth. Because we don't know who may be who. Right? I mean, last night we were looking at some brothers that we thought were Judah, but weren't. And if our belief was that the 12 tribe chart was false, if our belief was that the 12 tribe chart was false, and that the people in the aboriginals of these particular lands weren't Israelites, they wouldn't be Israelites at all. Right? It can't be based off of appearance. We got to go based off of the word of the Most High. Right? Now, to get an idea of the people of Benin, we have a picture of the people of Benin. Right? That's Benin, West Africa. Togo. Let's get our brothers and sisters in Togo. Togo. Our beautiful brothers and sisters in Togo as well. The Tainos. Taino brothers and sisters in the Dominican Republic. And last picture right there. Right? Now, later on in the series, we're going to be getting into the woolly hair. Because that's one of the ways that when we're looking at history and we're looking at geography and we're looking at ethnicity, it's one of the things that they use to determine who was a Negro, right? Because keep in mind when we look at these historical texts, they don't tell you that the Negroes were Israelites unless you're going into Bible dictionaries and Bible history, right? But what they do say is that woolly hair is specific to the Negro race. It's specific only to the Negro race, right? And when we look at these nations, when we look at the Tainos prior to the arrival of the Europeans, prior to their mixing with the Europeans, when we're looking at the South Pacific Islanders, we're looking at the Australian Aborigines, they had woolly hair. They had woolly hair. So what does that mean? If woolly hair is specific to Negroes, what does that tell you about these people? They were once Negroes. And for whatever set of reasons, that changed. That's the conclusion of our lesson on Simeon and Levi. All praise to the Most High. Everybody give the Most High some praise. See, it's unfortunate that we have to do, that we have to justify our position concerning the children of Israel, even though the scripture makes its position pretty clear. The 12 tribes are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All 12 tribes are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And some would be unrecognizable. It even gives us geographical locations of where some of our people are, but yet people still deny. Scriptures say land of Sinai. He will gather our people from the land of Sinim, Southeast Asia. But yet you would deny Southeast Asians, the people that we prove of the Southeast Asians to be of the children of Israel. Right? That's not how this works. We go according to the word of the Most High. And we also want to make this clear as well. The House of Judah International Fellowship Church wants to make this clear as well. We are not saying that everybody in the Dominican Republic is an Israelite. Not saying that either. What we're saying is that according to the Most High's prophecies, that's where the majority of our people would be. Right? That's the location that was given to us according to the scriptures. I am well aware that there are people from Spain, Edomites from Spain, that have generations in the island of Hispaniola. I know that. The history says that. That's like saying that they call them white Zimbabweans. Yeah. Euro Zimbabweans. It's like, okay, so when I say that the people of Zimbabwe are descended from the tribes of Israel, I'm not talking about them. We know where they come from. It's crazy. You see the elder. You see the double standard there, where they only want to call that. They only want to call that as it pertains to the tribes here in the Western Hemisphere. You're saying that everybody in Cuba is an Israelite, but if I rebut and say, is everybody in Ghana an Israelite? Is everyone in Nigeria an Israelite? It's like, well, the majority of them are. I'm like, you got Chinese people in Nigeria and Ghana trying to take over the land there. You got Europeans who have deep roots there because of colonization. But you're talking to me about white people who colonized in the Western Hemisphere. Yeah, we're putting all your double standards out there in the street. No, we're not going to do this no more. We're going to go according to the scriptures, and we're going to let the scriptures stand, and we're going to let them fall, let the chips fall as they may. Right? No, I'm not saying that everybody. For example, we were just talking about the let me pull this up. We were just talking about the amongst the house of Judah, the bishop and I. We were discussing the Fuller people, the Fuller tribe in Nigeria, how they're originally from the Middle East. They're from North Africa. They're primarily, I'm pretty. Brother Yakun, he's Igbo, so he knows, right? These people are primarily from Northern Africa. They're Hamitic.
Same traditions.
They're Berber, right? But they have the same traditions, the same customs. They've assimilated themselves into Western African culture. Some of them have even married themselves with other people. So some of these people, some of them are Israelites, but as a whole, the nation isn't. You see how tricky it gets, how murky the waters get? They have the same cultures. Some of them speak the same languages, some of the same type of languages. Some of them look just like us, but they aren't Israelites. And then some of them, who are the women that married actual Israelites,
not Israelite.
Right? I mean, you see it. You're starting to. It's hard to tell one from the other. Yeah. Because now you have these children with certain features. Now some of them have the woolly hair, and some of them don't. Some of them have certain customs, some of them don't. Right? So it confuses, it muddies the water, and that's why we can't continue to go based off of looks. We have to look at the history and the information that the Most High gave us.
Got white people Haiti too. Like when I visit the
Yeah.
country, like it's not even like it's like they're on the street selling fruit and whatever, just like all the other people that look like all us. Like it's white people in Haiti, it's black people in Haiti, it's whatever.
And you don't even think about it.
I don't know if they're Israelites or not, but I don't know. It's not up to me.
We don't look at people like, for example, we don't look at people when we see Asian brothers and sisters in the hood, we don't look at them and be like, why are they here?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna get me some chicken. I'm gonna give me some chicken and rice. You ain't thinking, oh, why are they here? It's the same thing. It's the same thing anywhere. In Jamaica, there's a wealth of different cultures in Jamaica. They don't think twice about it. Right? We have comments. Bishop Michael, Shalom. Good to see you here in the chat today. 6 million enslaved Israelites were taken to Cuba and Brazil, according to Gloria Estefan on PBS last night. Yep, absolutely. Yep. It's common knowledge. 6 million enslaved Israelites were taken to Cuba and Brazil, according now, and keep in mind, a lot of the brothers and sisters that were taken to Brazil, which we're going to get into when we go into Judah in the next lesson, a lot of them were from Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Angola. Those were from the tribe of Judah. So we served. Now, keep in mind, Brazil and the Aborigines are neck and neck with servitude as far as who've had the worst servitude. And Judah served one of the worst captivities in Brazil with the tribe of Asher, but yet we deny them. How you do that? How do you serve in a captivity with another nation and still deny that they went through the curses that you went through? How you do that? Khan, all praises. Thank you for that comment. This video has to be shared here in Africa. Khan, Bishop Michael. A lot of the information that we went over, because keep in mind, we have brothers and sisters in the House of Judah International Fellowship Church in Sierra Leone, right? And many who are also spread out across Africa, right? All praises to the Most High, who don't know what tribes that they're from. Because it's so hard to identify who came from where. But all praise to the Most High and His Holy Spirit. Last night, we figured it out. So now we'll be able to say, for the most part, from certain parts of Africa, who you may be. Even be able to go as far as the blacks in America, where you were brought, where your family came from, where they were enslaved in America. If you know their origins of where they arrived and where they were throughout slavery, we can also identify who you most likely may be from. What Judite or some, because keep in mind, Levi also was shipped. Some of Levi was also shipped to America during the transatlantic slave trade as well. Not in large number, but there were some. So we'll be able to expound and show you most likely what country you came from. All praises to the Most High. That's something that hasn't been done up to this point, where you can look and say, hey, I'm most likely from this country, or I'm most likely from that country. But even still, it's not definitive. Why? Because they were shipping Israelites. You have somebody in South Carolina, they bring slaves to South Carolina, and then they sell them off, and then they get sold again. And then your cousin gets sold, and your mama gets sold, and your daddy gets sold. So even still, the water is still so murky. But at least we have an idea, and that's what's going to be great for the brothers and sisters in Africa, because it's frustrating that we know that we're the same, that some of us are the same people as the brothers and sisters in Africa, but we can't say definitively what tribe they may be from, according to origin. But now, all praise to the Most High, we're able to do that. And we'll be getting into that in the coming weeks. I'm still deciding whether I want to do Judah and Benjamin back to back, or if I want to keep going according to the order of birth, which would be Judah and then Naphtali. But we'll see how that shakes out based off of how the Judah lesson goes. Any more comments? That's it. All right. Do we have any questions? We have quite a few people in the chat. Do we have any questions? Any more comments? Do you have anything?
No, you touched on it when you spoke about what we had spoken about last night. So
That
was good.
Do you have anything? We got a brother in here from the tribe of Levi. Do you have anything that you want to comment on? All right. Do you have anything? Any questions or comments? All right. So last week we did a quick vaccine update. I think we can make this a trend. What do you think, Elder? So let's do it. we have vaccine updates for this Sabbath as far as what they're trying to do with the jab, right? So CNN posted a article 2 days ago entitled "The Blunt Truth About Vaccination." It says it is time to impose vaccine mandates and passports. COVID-19 vaccines continue to perform extraordinarily well, but the rate of infection is worsening in unvaccinated populations. The Delta variant is offering a sobering reminder that the pandemic has faded in much of the country, but is certainly not ended. But both political parties have made the mistake of framing vaccines within the tradition of individualism. Even President Joe Biden, who has demonstrated his comfort with a muscular role for government, I've never heard anybody describe Joe Biden as muscular, who has demonstrated his comfort with the muscular role of government, keeps appealing to the individuals to make the right patriotic choice when it comes to receiving their jabs. I'm gonna drop down. It says it's not enough. Easy, accessible, and attractive are important. Nobody should face barriers toward receiving vaccines, but citizens must also not see this as an optional inoculation. Biden and other political leaders need to start thinking about the good of the collective, not just the rights of the individual. Doing so is not some sort of move towards socialism, as conservative critics inevitably argue. Thinking of the common good is as American as apple pie.
Wow.
So now. Now, first of all, you said that the regular vaccine works. The two, you're seeing great results with the 2 doses, but you're trying to add a 3rd dose, a booster. You want to add a booster, right? But keep in mind, you just said that they're doing that the results from the vaccine are extraordinary. If they're extraordinary, what you need a booster for? How you boost extraordinary? You can't get the virus before, but you really can't get the virus now. Right? But then they say, oh, you really can't get the virus now, but you still might get it and be a carrier. How backwards is that? Right? They said, you know what? I know the vaccine's working, and we need to make it's working so well, we should make it mandatory, do passports, and make a booster shot. Because we need to be boosted. Anybody else still noticing how all the only people you see on TV getting vaccines is brothers and sisters? And the only ones posting about getting their vaccine are brothers and sisters. We're the only one. Yeah, look what we did. We got the vaccine. Like I said, LeBron James refuses to say whether or not he got vaccinated, gets bashed for it. He may have gotten it. Still getting bashed for it. Keep in mind, it's a medical procedure. You're not supposed to reveal that information, right? A doctor can't reveal whether or not you've been vaccinated, but we're carrying around certificates as proof of whether we got vaccinated. Number 2, Cole Beasley says, my body, my choice. I have one life. I get to choose how I live it. We respect your position, Cole. He comes right out and says, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. And they say, we respect your position.
He gets left alone.
But LeBron says, I will not tell the public what it's a medical procedure. I will not tell the public whether or not I have gotten the vaccine. How dare you? How dare you not tell everybody your personal business? The Telegraph. Coronavirus latest. This was dropped today. Coronavirus latest news: vaccine passport plan will be fourth lockdown for pubs. Check this out. It says pubs, bars, and other venues will be closed down if mandatory vaccine passports are imposed this autumn. Hospitality leaders have been warned. Government is planning to require entertainment venues in England to demand proof of both jabs for entry or a negative test the day before through COVID status certificates later this year, according to the Times. It would be designed to tackle stalling vaccine take-up. Now keep in mind they're trying to stop vaccine hesitation. Well, you know what? We're going to shut down everything for people who don't have the vaccine. It would be designed to tackle stalling vaccine take-up with fewer than 100,000 doses being administered each day on average. As if 100,000 ain't a lot. Fewer than 100, that's still quite a bit. On average for the first time since April. I'm going to drop down. It says, you would be putting door control on every pub, bar, restaurant, coffee shop, hotel, nightclub, and music venue in the country to check certificates, and that's simply not happening at the moment. We would see high levels of business failure, high levels of business closure, unless there was substantial government support. What does that mean? In business terms, speaking in business terms. If they were to enact the vaccine passport and keep people from being able to go to certain businesses, business would be lost. Why? Because people are choosing not to get the vaccine, right? So if people are choosing not to get the vaccine and they can't go into these venues, guess what happens to the venues? Business goes away, they die. So in order for this plan to work, what would they need to do? They need to make vaccines. They wouldn't need government support. They would need to make these vaccines mandatory. Oh, not just the 2 shots either. You can't forget the booster. Don't forget that booster. You know they always get you with them extras. You get a burger and they're like, yeah, you want a shake? We'll throw in a large fry for 50 cents too. That's your booster. And for all of you already who've gotten the vaccine, who've gotten the jab,
Come back and get it again.
you're already suffering from it. Come back and get some more. You're already suffering from it. If you're not suffering, you're dead. And if you're not suffering, you will be soon. Right? So you know what? We'll say the booster not only helps with the side effects. They not only help with the side effects of the first 2 vaccines, but they also give you extra protection against the virus. Wait about 3 days, and I promise you, you're going to see it. You're going to see a statement exactly like that. Wait about 3 days and look it up. Look up what booster shots do. What they say the booster COVID-19 vaccine does. Bet you that's going to be the answer. Oh. They help defend against the side effects from the first 2 vaccines, and they give you extra protection. Right? This thing is crazy. But you know, the Most High made it clear what he prophesied. Right? We went over the vaccine a couple of weeks ago in the lesson. We went over a couple of weeks ago what the agenda is with this vaccine, what they're trying to do with it. The lotus with the lotus with the tail of a scorpion. Right? This isn't the first time we've gone over this. People who are mentally fragile enough to listen to the media and allow themselves to be deceived against their better. How many of you know that the Holy Spirit is always advising you? How many of you know that? When your spirit is telling you not to do something, that's called grieving the Holy Spirit. So when you're hearing about this vaccine and something inside of you is saying no, listen to it. Why? Because it's going to keep you from getting yourself killed. Whether it's falling into sin, because remember, the wages of sin is death. Whether it's falling into sin or whether it's doing something that's going to get you killed. I haven't spoken to a brother or sister who didn't feel as though what they're about to do was wrong with the vaccine. Well, I had questions, I had doubts, but they were saying that people were dying and people were just passing away. And you know what? People are getting the vaccine and still passing away. What's your answer? You were fine before the vaccine. Why would you get something to prevent something when you're already fine? Right? It's like, oh, you got to protect yourself from the virus. So you want me to get a virus, get a vaccine, pump a virus into myself that I haven't been exposed to. That's like giving a Native American a chicken pox vaccine back before Christopher Columbus. Why would they need a smallpox vaccine? The Native Americans need a smallpox vaccine when chances are if the Europeans never showed up, they never would have been exposed to it in the first place. Why? Yeah, you know what, Native Americans come up, yeah, this is a smallpox vaccine. What's smallpox? But anyways, we'll be back next week with more information on this. But this thing is continuing to move forward, and they're doing it incrementally. They're doing it slowly. They're making you think that it's your choice when it's not. It's a choice now. But the time's coming where it won't be. That's where it comes. We got to stay prayed up, stay in touch with the Most High, stay close to the Spirit. And what these lessons are going to do is they're going to show the children of Israel not only who they are, but why they're being targeted, what their issues are to get right with the Most High, different things like that. That's why this is so important. When people say that identity isn't important, that is an absolute lie. It's one of the most important things. It's not one of the most important things to this gospel, but it's one of the most important things for self-peace, for finding righteousness within yourself. You have to know what your personal battles are. If you know what tribe you're from, you know what battles you have. You know what your shortcomings may be, what your weaknesses may be. That's why this is important. All right. All praise to the Most High. Next week, not next week, but our next lesson will be on the tribe of Judah. And I have an interesting segment. We're going to be going into Mansa Musa, the richest man in the history of the world, net worth wise. Right. So we're going to be getting into that later in the future. Right. So all praise to the Most High. I want to give all thanks and praise to the Most High. Haya, by Hashem Yeshaya, Rawat, for those who not speak the Hebrew, that is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Right? We want to send a shout out to our brothers and sisters, not only in Sierra Leone, but our growing body in the Philippines as well. Continuing to do this work and bearing this truth. All praises. That's the elder right there. Give him a shout out, elder.
Shalom.
Shalom. All right. So we're gonna continue to do this work, continue to bring this thing out, and give a round of applause here. Brother Yakum, Kana Yakum, right? So we'll be back next week, not next week, but next lesson with the lesson entitled "The Children of Israel, the Tribe of Judah." Without any further ado, y'all have a blessed Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.